Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Digital Future. Today, with me, I have comedian, writer, co-editor-in-chief of Hard Drive magazine, Jeremy Kaplowitz. Jeremy, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very good, thanks. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
So I've been a fan of Jeremy's work for a while now. Jeremy, for an introduction, what on earth is Hard Drive for the people who are missing out on some of the best content that they can find?
Oh, thank you. Hard Drive is the video game section of the Hard Times, which is a satire website, kind of like The Onion, but specifically for punk rock. And then they do all music and punk rock, and we do video games.
Mm-hmm. So basically, a lot of people say that it's like The Onion, but it's for video games. And I think a great way to introduce it would be, what is your favorite headline that you've done, or what is an example of the kind of thing that you do?
My favorite headline that
It's a
we've
tough one,
done.
tough first question.
Yeah, that's really hard. We've done. It's weird because we've had like since it's been going, we do like a few articles every day, and it's been like almost 3 years now. So we have like I don't know, like 1,500 articles on the site. So I guess like my favorite thing that I personally, it's hard to pick like other people's stuff, even though there's so many great articles. But my personal favorite that I've done is the YouTube dad videos, which I filmed with one of our writers, Giovanni Colantonio, where I play a divorced dad who's like vlogging through the pain.
Flocking through the pain.
Yeah,
Is that the name of the series? That is
it
incredible.
should be. It should be, but no.
All right, so everyone check those out as well. Anyway, so you and your fellow co-editor had a fantastic interview with with Vice, not getting deported, about how you managed to be successful whilst having strong left-wing views
Yes.
in your content, quote unapologetically left-wing. How does this left-wing nature come out in Hard
Sure.
Drive content?
I feel a little bad about that interview. I like that article is really great, and I'm really happy that people really liked it. But I felt bad that that became the headline of the article because I feel like mostly we just try to write jokes about video games that are funny, and I think that maybe my personal favorite kind of comedy is when it's not necessarily political, but the person's political views are strong enough that it comes out through it. And I don't know if I could do it again. I don't know if I would have said it as strongly, but yeah, we always try not to be like the assholes, especially because like video games are like the stereotype of gamers is so negative. And I think that when we first started doing Hard Drive, a lot of people expected the jokes to just be like, smelly gamer is racist. And we were like, yeah, like we don't want to like play to that. We want to be, we want to, there's such a group of people who like nerd culture and aren't the worst people in the world. So that was like a big focus for us.
So, are you ever concerned about having, I guess, political themes in your jokes and in your articles? Because a lot of people when they're talking about a hobby like gaming, they said, "Oh, I don't want politics in what I do." Was this ever something in the early days, or even now, that you feel like, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't, take this stance, or maybe I shouldn't, put this into my content"?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that people who don't want politics in games are that's obviously like a bullshit thing to say because
Yeah.
like politics have always been in games and they're in everything and politics is just like the decisions based around how to live your life or whatever. So that there's always been people who are like I don't like politics in games and then play or like we should go back to the old games like Doom where it was just about like fighting Mecha Hitler.
Yeah, shooting meta Hitler.
Yeah. Or like Star Wars shouldn't be political. It should just have like queer imagery that represents the Nazis as the bad guys. But yeah, so I always thought that was kind of silly. But we're like we're DIY. Like I started being full time at the Hard Times like 2 months ago, and I'm the second employee. And like so like the our view of it has always been like who cares, like we're all doing this during our day jobs, like what are they going to do, like tell us to stop tweeting, like it doesn't really matter, like the stakes are so low because like it's just not a big organization. You can't if they're going to be like, oh, I'm going to yell at Jeremy's boss, it's like my boss is just like my friend Matt. Like it doesn't there's no one to yell at.
So, do you ever think that this lack of fear that you have is part of the reason why Hard Drive in particular has seen so much success? Obviously, spin-off of Hard Times, and I think Hard Drive is one of the spin-offs and one of the arms of Hard Times which has seen the most attention and the most success. Do you think that this lack of fear in what you make is something which is appealing about Hard Drive?
I think it's definitely helpful. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of things that suck about being such a small group. Like we just don't have the money. We don't have, if we want to make merch, like the merch comes out of like someone's garage, and it's like we sold all these masks recently, and people were upset that like we weren't turning them around fast enough, and they didn't realize that it was just like the CEO's girlfriend was sewing together masks. So that sucks, but like it definitely helps because like I think a lot of our best articles and our biggest articles are breaking news articles and topical stuff. So like The Last of Us 2 weeks happened recently, and we had an article in 30 minutes about The Last of Us 2 weeks. And I think that that's just because like there's no like hierarchy. Like at The Onion, which obviously we love The Onion, and this isn't like to insult The Onion. The Onion, I think the way it works is like if they have a topical article, like it has to go through a writer and a freelance editor and an artist. For us, it's like I can write an article, I make the photo, and I publish it to WordPress, and I put it online. Like all we really need is like we have some writers here and there, but like it's just there's so few. There's like at most 2 people involved.
So is that something that you really think helps you be creative in what you create? Because I think a lot of time people find the classic question someone in satire or something related to The Onion is, oh, how do you make headlines when the world is already so crazy? How do you make a joke when that is the case? So is that freedom something that you value very much in the stuff that you do?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely nice to not have anyone really telling us what to do. I mean, so Matt Sankum is the creator of the Hard Times, and he used to like have more of a hands-on deal with Hard Drive, but nowadays he's kind of just like, yeah, I trust what you guys are up to, so like feel free to do whatever you want. Matt doesn't even really agree with me politically on that many things, and most of so he doesn't really care that much.
So you brought it up earlier a bit, but the gaming community in particular gets a lot of accusations of toxicity and things like you said, basement dwellers, racist sex, and these sort of things.
Yeah.
Is this the type of thing that you do you agree with these accusations at least to a certain extent? And if so, have you ever been concerned when creating gaming content in this form of engaging with these communities in a sense?
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, it's not untrue. I mean, Gamergate was like a huge thing. Like, we're not gonna we criticize those things as well. And I think I said in the Vice interview too that like a lot of times, like I think we just had a big article on Kotaku in Action on Reddit. Like Kotaku in Action loves our content, which is a bummer because they're like objectively shitty, and I don't like it when they share our stuff. But a lot of times we just write jokes about like Mario is a funny character, he's a short little plumber guy. So like people will always share. Even like shitty people will share like our non-shitty content, which is like, so there's definitely a give and take of like, especially early on, we wanted it to be clear that we were people who like this hobby and we're not making fun of the entirety of it, but also like we know that there's shittiness about it, and hopefully we're making fun of like ourselves and the shittiness in the community, as well as celebrating the good stuff about it.
So a lot of gaming journalism, I guess the more like review side aspect, there's a lot of criticism for being inauthentic or having attitudes which seem to be apathetic towards the gaming industry.
Right.
Is this something that when starting out and still to this day you are concerned about in what you make, that you might make a joke about a game and then suddenly everyone says like, oh this person hasn't really played it enough, or they haven't done enough hours, or they just get good, the standard stuff?
Right. I mean, that happens all the time. We get stuff wrong so often, and people always point it out in the comments. And luckily with us, like the biggest shield that we have is that people just like anytime that we fuck up, we'll like let's say I'm trying to think of a recent one. Recently this is not even a video game one, but recently we accidentally put like the capital of Denmark in the wrong country or something, and a bunch of comments were like, oh, that's interesting. I guess you guys don't know how to read a map or whatever. And every time we make any mistake, there's always like 20 comments that are like, I guess you don't get satire. They're making fun of how shitty journalism is.
It's the 4D chess.
Yeah, and it's thank God for that, because we make so many mistakes. And I like a lot of I don't play a million video games. There's like so many games, and a lot of times I find myself like deep in Wikipedia's trying to like see if something makes sense, and then eventually I'm just like, whatever, they'll fucking say it's satire.
Because I have the same issue. I play a lot of games. I have a friend who does a gaming podcast I've gone on before. I'm wearing a PlayStation t-shirt. But then like I talk to someone about games and I always think like, oh, what do you play? What are you playing right now? And it always just falls to like 1 or 2 games. It's always just Smash Ultimate and Animal Crossing. I'm like, oh, that is all I do. Is this something that like, do you feel pressure when you're writing to try and like play a million different things and try and know about this sort of stuff? Or do you just say, you know what, I'm just trying to make it funny. I don't need to be an expert.
Yeah. No, I mean, luckily we have a lot of writers who have, when we trust them to just be more experts about it. Like none of the editors for Hard Drive watch anime. So like just straight up, none of us watch, like we just don't really watch that much anime at all. And, you know, so whenever we run an anime article, it's generally because we like took a group of our writers who like anime a lot and we're like, we trust you to just put out this many articles and we're not really going to edit them for content at all. So like that's like a big help, is just being like, you know, we have a big group of people, everyone likes different things throughout all of it. We, you know, have like a pretty big group of interests, but also it's just like, you don't need to be that. Luckily with Satire, our articles are like 250 to 300 words. You need like 3 to 5 references to the game. So like you can like fact check those. I imagine it's a lot harder for like, you know, real reviewers to review a video game that they don't know that much about, but we can fake it pretty well.
Very convincingly, I'm sure. Have you ever had a case of writing a satirical article or a joke article and then checking the comments and then people think it's very real and they're like, well, actually, that's not totally right at all? Do you ever have people getting fooled by the hard drive?
Yeah, I mean, that happens a lot. I think even today, let me see. There was one we had today that was, what was it? Call of Duty Warzone concert features 500-foot Ted Nugent. And like a lot of the comments were like, is this real? And then people saying yes, and getting a lot of likes, which I always like. It's absolutely true. And my favorite is when people like very intelligently are like, this isn't real, you can tell. And it's like, yeah, well, we always try not to do things that feel like it could be real. Like we never, like a lot of like quote unquote satire is just like tricking people into clicking on their website. And ours is always, the joke is right in the headline. So you shouldn't, unless you're like really dumb, you shouldn't think it's real.
There's the disclaimer for you. If you get tricked by a hard drive article, you're very dumb. Quote that. That'll be the title of the video.
Yeah.
So do you ever have problems with, I guess, like monetization of hard drive? You know, not to get too into the weeds, but as you brought up in the Vice interview, and you just you bring up there, a lot of the time, you know, the joke is in the headline. Is there ever a problem with actually bringing people onto the site because, you know, if the joke is in the headline, or is this something which is a lot more click-through rates than you'd expect?
I mean, yeah, we don't get like 1 billion clicks. It's hard to get people onto the website. Like if something gets, you know, 20,000 likes on Twitter, that doesn't mean that every person clicked it. Like a very small percent, especially on Twitter, will click the actual article. But I do think that, and maybe this is like foolish, but like I think that the best way to get people to go on your website is still going to be to put out the best articles. And I think that if you trick people, they're not going to keep coming. Like the only way to like actually consistently get people to do it is maybe they see 50 headlines they really like and finally they click one and it's really funny, and then they don't click again for like a year, and then eventually, you know, it gets to the point where they're like, oh, like I always associate this website with good content, so I'm gonna keep going to it. And then again, like the stakes are pretty low. I mean, now that like I'm actually working full time at Hard Drive, maybe it's different. But like when I was just doing it at my day job, like if they didn't click, it didn't matter that much. Like the cost of the website wasn't that much.
So as I said earlier, Hard Drive is one of the, you know, most successful spin-offs from Hard Times. What do you think it is specifically about Hard Drive that has resonated with people beyond potentially, you know, the lack of fear to make political jokes? What is it that you think has really clicked with such a large portion of, I guess, of the gaming community to really love Hard Drive?
I think, well, if you're speaking of just the Hard Times, the biggest thing is that video games are popular. I don't know if you know much about the failed Hard Times satire projects.
I've seen there was a lot of others about like extreme sports and things like that, but I hadn't heard of them.
The two big ones are
so maybe that's
thing. Yeah, the first one was specifically about like MMA fighting, and the second one was a satire of like Alex Jones and InfoWars. So both of them were just like, you know, not as like, you know, and then at the end we were just like, let's do something about video. Like that could be like let's do something people like. And so that's, you know, the biggest one. But yeah, I don't know. I think that the Hard Times gives a lot of freedom. They're really good about just like saying like, hey, if you want to do something, like we'll support you and give you an audience for it. And as long as you're not like a shitty person, like we'll let you, like we'll give you a month or two to see if it works out. And Hard Drive was like pretty quickly it gained an audience.
So what is the process of writing a satirical headline? Is this something where you're a very reactive process where you just see something and think, oh, that could be funny, or do you put a lot of effort into trying like craft a clever and complex joke?
I think when I first started writing, it was definitely more like sitting down and thinking like, what are things I could make fun of. But now it's definitely more reflexive, where it's like, if I want to write a joke about like a trending topic, I just try to think of like a way to flip it. Like with that Warzone one, it's like, okay, Travis, there's a big story, which is that Fortnite held a concert with Travis Scott in the game. And it's like, how can you make a joke about that? Like, well, you can do an analogy. Like, what's a game that's similar to Fortnite? And it's like, okay, Call of Duty. And that's different because of like the audience is different. So how can you like comedically flip it so that there's an analogous joke, you know what I mean? But so now it's like more like, I don't know. Now it definitely, when I first started, it was like more thinking about it. But now that I've written so many of them, it's like it's more just, I don't know, reflexive, I guess. It's hard to explain.
So obviously you're also a stand-up comedian. Check out the YouTube channel Jeremy K to see some fantastic clips. One of the best ones you have, which we talked about beforehand, was when you did a whole stand-up routine as 1990s Jerry Seinfeld doing bits about his 13-year-old girlfriend.
Yes.
It's incredibly hilarious.
Watch
it. And has your experience with Hard Drive and this sort of more, I guess, consistent content production helped you with the other aspects of your life and the other side of stand-up comedy? Is this a more reciprocal relationship between the two, where doing one has helped the other, or are they two very separate entities that you change proverbial caps to flip between the two?
Yeah, I would say honestly, it's made stand-up a lot harder. When I first was doing comedy, I did just stand-up, and I feel like when you think of ideas, like my brain doesn't work where I can like do that many different things at once. So I feel like when I used to do stand-up all the time, if I thought of a comedy idea, it was in stand-up form, and it was like a bit for stand-up. And now when I think of comedy ideas, it's in headline form or like, tweet form or whatever the fuck. So it's definitely made it a lot harder to write stand-up. And I've heard that other people, like a lot of TV writers, which obviously is a much bigger thing than what I'm doing, but I've heard a lot of TV writers struggle with that too, where like if you get hired by SNL, it becomes suddenly a lot harder to write new stand-up. But yeah, so it's harder. You have to work a lot harder, and I haven't been able to do that super well. But that show's really fun. That show's called Shtick or Treat. Every year on Halloween they do a show where people do impressions of other comedians. It's always fun to have like a prompt where it's like you have to write a thing about X, and then it honestly is kind of similar to just doing Hard Drive.
So is this something that you had to adapt to quite quickly when shifting your content towards the stuff that Hard Drive does, in terms of adapting the type of humor that you're used to? Is this something that you might have struggled with in your writing and production in general?
I think it's slower than that. Like when I first was starting doing satire stuff, I was just like doing stand-up a lot, and then I would sit down and try to write some headlines like once a week, and then like it slowly became like the main like I was writing headlines for like Above Average, and then I was writing articles for the Hard Times, and then I was editing for the Hard Times, and then I was editor-in-chief of like a big section of the Hard Times. So like slowly over the last few years, it has just been like more and more satire, less and less stand-up. And now hopefully I can try to like get back into doing more stand-up, although stand-up has ended and live groups are no more.
Stand-up is no longer a concept that exists.
So maybe I made the right call. I don't know. Maybe it worked out for me.
It was a genius preemptive move.
Yeah. I put out the coronavirus so that all my peers would stop doing better than me.
To ensure that the satirical gaming content is the #1 mainstream for any budding comedians.
Yes, I have to watch all my friends who surpassed me in comedy being forced to do Zoom shows.
Zoom shows in front of 300 people.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh no. So obviously you're a stand-up comedian and you do satirical writing. Is the the sort of niche, for example, when I told my mum that you'd agreed to come on, and I was like, oh my god, I've got Jeremy Kaplowitz, she's like, oh, what does he do? And I was like, oh well, have you ever heard of The Onion? It's like The Onion but for gaming. She gave me a look. And my question is, do you have any experience where people that you tell them it's kind of like The Onion but for gaming, and they kind of look at you like, oh,
Yeah. If you don't know what The Onion is, then it's already like, well, that's
Yeah, I've had that problem
bad.
as well.
I would say maybe it's like, if I had to describe it without using the words The Onion, it's
Mhm.
like IGN from like the Twilight Zone or something, you know. But yeah, it's definitely harder if you don't know The
Mhm. I think because I think part of that is also with the tag of I guess, gaming. Were you ever concerned of like wedding your, I guess, brand or the stuff that you do so close to a hobby or a vocation, I guess, as someone put it, which is considered to be childish by some people. Do you ever think is that something you've ever thought about in terms of being potentially taken as seriously in future endeavors?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I've never really thought that much about a lot of this stuff. Um,
You're welcome.
yeah, I'm sure I will one day get fired for some tweet somewhere, but no, I think that like I don't know, video games is hopefully one day video games will be the kind of thing where like people will say like, oh, do you like movies? It's like, yeah, of
Mm,
course, everyone
yeah.
sees
Do you like
movies.
music? Everyone likes
Yeah,
music.
yeah, people listen to music more than others, sure, and people are annoying about music, but like everyone knows what music is.
Mhm.
But I don't know. Maybe one day that'll. I think like obviously video games have been around since like the 80s or whatever, like primarily. So like as people just age into it, like back then only kids played it, and then like as time went on, those kids are now old, so it'll eventually be the thing. I mean, maybe one. I don't know. Like I think like it'll be like a sign of the times when like the New York Times has like a steady video game reviewer or something. I think
Mhm.
that'll be like, oh, okay, like this is now just like a normal mainstream hobby. I mean, it already is a mainstream hobby, but you know what I mean.
I think one of the reasons for me, I'm a big fan of video games. One of the reasons I don't really generally love most gaming journalism is because from like video game reviews, for example, like Kotaku, I tend to not love their stuff because there always seems to be an element of, I guess, shame to me, where
Hmm.
like I feel like they reflect that feeling of not being taken seriously by other writers in their work. And I think one of the things that at least personally I love so much about Hard Drive is that is just not a thing. It is a celebration and often a self-deprecation of the
Yeah.
gaming community, which I enjoy so much. One thing that often gets talked about right now around comedy is the issue of PC culture, where people feel like they can't make edgier jokes or like comedy's impossible nowadays. But I think Hard Drive has been one of the areas where you guys have some pretty dark humor. One of my personal favorites is Facebook tells Shooter he could reach more people if he boosts for paid by $50 or something like that.
Yeah.
That they're more dark content. Is this something that you've either ever felt in what you're writing, or is this just a ridiculous assertion by someone who isn't very funny?
I think it is a ridiculous assertion by someone who isn't very funny. I really don't think that's a real thing. And maybe I'll get in trouble for something one day, but like I think that like all of comedy is about especially stand up, and a lot of people who complain about that stuff are stand up comedians. Comedy is about putting out ideas and getting a reaction from an audience and then adjusting it. So like no one would ever say that like audiences don't like laughing anymore, or I guess they do, but the idea is that like that is all of stand up especially, and comedy in general, is based on how much the audience likes you. So like if you tell a joke and the audience doesn't like it, they don't have to give a reason for why. It's your job to say like, okay, no big deal, I'm gonna adjust it. And maybe sometimes people like will too quickly like end a career or whatever. Like there was that John Ronson book. I've heard it's great. I haven't read it, but I think it's called like You've Been Publicly Shamed or whatever. But
Check it out.
yeah, read a book. Tell me and
Oh.
then send me the description of it.
Tweet at Jeremy K.
Yeah,
Tweets.
whether it was a good book or not, because I haven't read it. I heard him on a podcast once. But yeah, I don't know. But like, I think
Podcasts
that
are the
like,
new books anyway.
yeah, exactly. I think that in general, people are too big of a baby about that, and
Mhm.
maybe one day that'll bite me in the ass. That's fine.
I think that's one thing that people tend to like. They connect those two ideas very closely. Things like with left wing ideas and the sort of cancel culture PC thing.
Hmm.
Um, and I think people, they see Hard Drive and they see the article which unapologetically left wing is the headline, and they think, oh, but how does this blend with
Right.
dark humor? Is this something that you've ever had someone say to you, or you've ever had a concern of thinking about these two communities? Will they mix? Do they mix perfectly well, or is something you've just gone, well, no, of course left wing and dark humor go together because there's so many examples of that.
Right. I don't know. I mean, I think that like people always complain about like when they talk about like PC culture, it's usually like SJWs or
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
It's a Ben Shapiro video.
Yeah, I don't know that that's necessarily true of like the like left-wing political sphere. I think, I don't know. I mean, obviously that's like becoming a bigger and bigger thing right now online. Like, you know, I wouldn't say that like Hard Drive is in the same world as like Chapo Trap House or something, but like if anything, those guys get accused of being offensive more than they get accused of being like SJWs. But I mean, like I said, like they keep sharing our stuff on Kotaku and Hash. I don't know what that means. I think that for us, like, we don't think about it too much. We just try to like make jokes that we think are funny and aren't hurting anyone. Like we don't try to punch down, and we try to just make funny jokes. So like that Facebook joke is dark, but the punchline is that Facebook promoted like a shooter. Like literally it was in response to Facebook being evil. So like we don't really think that much about, and people were mad about it, but like we don't think that much about the people who are mad, and just kind of make jokes that we think are, you know, right.
Is that something that do you think pairs well with dark humor, or assisted sort of its effectiveness in it being grounded in reality? You know, so for example, with this joke, if someone were to say, "Oh, that's horribly dark," you just say, "Well, it happened." Am I not allowed? You know, am I allowed to say that? Is this something that you feel helps in what you create in having it keeping grounded? You know, a lot of people would say that the Jerry Seinfeld dating a 13-year-old bit is ridiculous and dark and disgusting, but it's so grounded in reality that to complain about it almost seems like you're more angry at the person joking about it than the actual thing.
Right. I mean, I think when you make dark jokes in general, you just have to be prepared for people not to like it, because people aren't going to like it, and you just have to, you know, like that's part of the game. Is like if you're going to make that joke, you know, you have to be okay with the fact that a lot of people aren't going to like it, and if you want to make jokes that every single person likes, then you should make jokes about puppies and kitty cats or whatever, because that's like what people like. But yeah, if you're gonna make a joke about Facebook promoting a shooter, then generally you have to know that, you have to be okay with the fact that people aren't gonna love it.
I think that's one of the things that once again, personally, I really enjoy about Hard Drive is that it does have a sense of freedom, in that it doesn't seem to labor too much points. You know, for example, when I first read the Vice article, and I read it, I was like, I've been following Hard Drive for a while. I've never seen anything that is overtly political in that sense. You know, sometimes when people hear that, especially in gaming, they hear the word political, they think, oh, activism, or they think, you know, this person's trying to like shove something down your throat, where there is that balance between having political jokes but also just having them be funny. It's like, as you said in the beginning, it's relatively an unavoidable topic. Is there something you've ever thought about in terms of activism in your writing, or is it just, hey, this is a funny topic, I'm going to do the funny topic?
I would say that like Hard Drive is like the furthest from activism. Like none of us are activists. We're just like dumb people online who have strong opinions. I really think that's what it comes down to. Like, so me and the three other editors of Hard Drive, it's just to name them all. It's me, Andy Holt, Kevin Flynn, and Mark Roebuck. I don't think that we're trying very hard to write political jokes. I think like if you go to any of our Twitter feeds, like our personal feeds, it's mostly just like complaining about like political stuff. So when we make jokes about video games, like that's gonna come out just because like it's how we think. So we're definitely not like, I wouldn't say any of us are even close to activists. We're not changing anything. We're just making stupid jokes that make us feel better.
So is that something that you kind of thought when you finally got to read the Vice article, you were like, oh, this is great, but it does kind of say, it makes it seem very nervous that every time you write down, you go, right, what's the message we can do?
No, not at all. It's definitely not what we're doing. I don't think that's even what the writer was trying to say. But when I read it, I was like, oh man, I hope people don't think that like Hard Drive is specifically political, because it's like there's never been a discussion in Hard Drive of like, this is what you're allowed to say, this is what you're not. It's just generally like that's what we all think. So like it comes out.
I mean, yeah, because one of the first like Hard Drive articles I thought of when reading the Vice article was I think it was like Dad briefly proud of son when he says he's getting into deck building.
Yeah.
Obviously, Magic the Gathering joke, and I was like,
and that's what convinced you to become a left-wing activist is reading our Magic the Gathering article.
That's when I haven't got it next to me. I thought I have a Bernie Sanders jumper somewhere. I was gonna say that's what convinced me to buy a starter pack of Magic the Gathering cards and a Bernie Sanders jumper.
Right.
So. On the issue of, you know, Hard Drive being overtly political, I think I'd like to challenge your assertion that it's not, because Hard Drive has been very involved in a political campaign.
That's true. This is true. That's undeniably true.
Please tell me about Ace Watkins, 2020 presidential candidate.
So Ace Watkins is, of course, the only gamer running for president of these beautiful United States. And yeah, I don't know. Kind of, Ace Watkins is like a shit post that blew up, and now there's like a world around it, and it's very cool, and it's very fun to do shows. And we went to PAX East recently and pretended to be running for president, and people shook our hands, and it was wild. It was great.
So
It's very fun.
what gave you the idea to put in quite a lot of effort? I mean, for example, the campaign ad is very well put together. It's hilarious. I believe it even managed to include the bit where it's like, "I'm Ace Watkins and I approve this message."
Yeah.
What gave you the idea to create such a fantastic concept?
We shit. It started as a shit post, and it was just like I tweet a lot of dumb stuff on the Hard Drive account. It's often at like the middle of the night, and one of the things that I've been tweeting for like the course of a year was like, if we get a gamer president, then like finally Fortnite wouldn't be illegal anymore and stuff like that. That makes no sense. And then we decided to sell shirts that said like a gamer for president, and very few people bought them, even though the jokes were very popular and the tweets even about the shirts were very popular, but no one bought them. And we thought like, realistically, we should have just thought like no one would buy this because it's embarrassing to wear. But like, and I don't even wear this, even though I own it.
I would happily wear one with way too much pride.
But our big idea, and I think now it makes more sense, is that we were like, well, what if we just like put a name to it? Like, let's make like a Twitter account for a character who like is the gamer president. We'll make some tweets and we'll get 5,000 followers and we'll call it a day. Which is like what we do a lot. Like we've had like before that we had like other accounts that were similar, where we had Raytheon Gaming, which was a parody of like Burger King Gaming or whatever, but owned by Raytheon, and they shut it down in like 2 days. And we were just like, yeah, fuck it. Like we'll do another thing and it'll get shut down. And then like in the next day it had like 40,000 followers. Like we just like we wanted to sell shirts. We asked our friend Phil, who's like a really funny, really talented, hardworking comedian, Phil Jameson, and he was like, we were like, if we write the script, you want to like film this thing in front of a green screen? He was like, yeah, sure. So we filmed it. We made his like icon the profile picture, and then it blew up. So we were like, let's keep doing it. Like, why not like expand on this character? Like, let's. And then I think like within like 2 or 3 days, we were within striking distance of one of the people actually running for president, like follower wise. So we're like, we have to.
It was John Delaney, I believe.
Yes.
You had more followers then, and yeah. I'd never been happier.
We were so excited to just like taunt John Delaney that like we were a fake campaign running for gamer rights or whatever. And yeah, I don't know. It was very fun. Phil's a real like professional. I think that if it wasn't Phil, it probably wouldn't have happened. But he's just like, he's so good at videos. His videos are really funny if you ever haven't seen them. And he's just like, it just helps solidify the character's real instead of just like a bunch of tweets.
I think it was one of the jokes. I think it has one of the bits, I guess, that has resonated with so many people so quickly, especially. I think everyone can get behind a good gamers are the most oppressed people joke at, pretty easily. Is this something that you feel happens a lot of the time when you're so heavily invested in shit posting, where you'll put so much out there and then occasionally something totally random that you never expect just explodes?
Yeah, it's the Dandelion Strategy, I think, is what it's called. I didn't coin that term, but I think the idea is that like dandelions are they have a million not a million, they have a bunch of seeds and they fly off and they hope that one seed will plant and grow a new dandelion. And if you put out a bunch of seeds, most of them won't be anything. Some of them will be Paradox Untold, which is another Twitter account that never passed 5,000 followers by Hard Drive. Some of them will be Truthbang, which is our InfoWars satire website that no one shared because it was insane. But eventually you'll get a Ace Watkins or a Hard Drive or whatever. And I guess really the way to do it.
So what is the number one seed that you think deserves more attention, or that you wish had been given more sunlight in order to grow?
I mean, without it failing, the Hard Drive wouldn't have existed. But Truthbang was funny, man. People could have liked Truthbang. It was based off of my old website, Wizard People of New York, and it was like a collaboration with the Hard Times. And it was just insane. And we ran some like truly insane articles. I think only one article ever did well on it. And a lot of people came up to us and were like, I love Truthbang. I will never share it. I will never engage with its content. It's too far. And it's their loss. And you know what? A lot of people have tried Truthbang since then. I mean, not literally. Obviously, we were never that big. But after Truth Bang ended, Clickhole tried Patriot Hole, which was not a very big success. There was Jordan Klepper tried The Opposition with The Daily Show, which was not a big success. And I think Drill has his own Truth Hunters now or whatever. And like, it's just kind of weird to see everyone be like, "Oh, you know, it'd be a great idea," and they put it up, they do all the stuff that we did, and then it fails.
It's almost a beautiful, depressing irony that the one that people loved so much could never grow because it was too good at what it was trying to be.
Yeah, it was too insane. We had a whole gay frog week where we only ran articles about gay frogs, and it was great. That was the last thing we did, and then after that, we ended it.
All I can think of is like a Watch Mojo style video, but all about gay frogs.
It was all about how Alex Jones thinks that like the water's turning frogs gay.
The classic, the fluoride in water is turning the friggin' frogs gay.
Yeah, so we had all these articles that were like, "I will not have sex with a frog," and it was very silly.
That's incredible. Okay. I think that is the perfect possible way we could end the podcast here on "I will not have sex with a frog." Right, Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
This has been fun. I have a long list of things that I want to be plugging with you. So number one, follow Jeremy on Twitter at Jeremy Smiles. I thought it was very appropriate because my surname's Smiley. I liked that a lot.
Oh, there you go.
I thought that was nice. Podcast, the show. Another one of your new seeds trying to grow, the NY Shitpost. Check that out.
Yes, that's true.
Obviously, Hard Drive. I believe it's at Hard Drive Mag on Twitter.
Yeah.
And of course, Jeremy K on YouTube to see some of your fantastic comedy work. Jeremy, once again, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Great. All right. Thanks for listening, everyone.